Hello and welcome back to Cuppa Tea with the Vet. And we've got Hugh on today. Hi, Hugh.
Good morning.
Crack on and
Evening.
introduce yourself. Although I've got to tell you, Hugh is from Australia, so the poor guy, give him a break. He has literally just got out of bed at the crack of sparrows. You have to tell us what time it is your end. And if we've got any of our usual followers and watchers from Australia, please come on and say hello, because it's a bit weird talking to someone from the other side of the world. Hi, Hugh, introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Hubert Hiemstra. It is 5 a.m. where I am. 5 a.m. So it's a cup of coffee with the vet this morning, not tea for me at this time of the day. So I am a vet. You can tell by the accent, South African born and raised and qualified, and worked in South Africa and in the UK for 3 years, and then about 12 years in Australia now, mostly like 99% in small animal practice, and the last almost decade mostly in emergency. I also host a podcast for veterinarians called The Vet Vault, and a clinical continuing education podcast as well, linked to that. Now, I am a dad of 3 boys, and that's about it.
That is an amazing introduction. There's so much going on there. I was laughing because in my head when you said I'm a vet, I'm sure you can tell by my accent, and I was thinking, hey, not all of vets sound like that. Sorry, you continued, so it was okay. So I definitely want to tell everybody that how I met Hugh, because obviously I don't normally meet vets from Australia, although bizarrely I do know more vets in Australia than I would expect, being that I've never been there at all. But Hugh actually invited me to come on his Vet Vault podcast to talk about physio, which was absolutely amazing, because I absolutely love it when anybody wants to learn anything new about it. So I'm sure we're going to end up talking more about that, because but the bit that made me super excited is that Hugh's Vet Vault podcast, like I say, I'm sure he'll say more about it, is about learning for vets and veterinary professionals so they can get more of an idea. And he had, Matt Gurney? Was it Matt Gurney you had on?
Yeah.
He had Matt Gurney on, and he was talking about pain, and he runs the Zero Pain Philosophy, which is a website for veterinary professionals to end pain as much as possible. And he was saying how wonderful physio was. So Hugh decided to reach out and find out more about it. So I had a little party in my head, obviously, and couldn't wait to talk more about it. So we had a great podcast about that, which was wonderful. And so I jumped on the opportunity and said, Hugh, can you come and do my live one? And he said yes, which was very kind, considering, like I say, 5 a.m. And his was pre-recorded, so I didn't have to get out of bed early.
That's one of the downsides of emergency work is I'm used to weird hours. I do 5 a.m. shifts a couple of times a week anyway, so it's not a massive stretch for me. And also with the podcast, a lot of our guests are international, and you have to kind of try and fit in with people in California and the UK and all sorts. So yeah, it's not the end of the world.
It's very global. So you're working as an emergency vet now then? As well?
Yeah, the last decade or so, I worked in a big GP clinic in Perth in WA, and we didn't have an after-hour service, and so I started an after-hour service there, an emergency clinic, and so that was my shift towards emergency, and kind of stuck to it. I'd been in GP practice for about 15 years at that stage. So also you get a little bit bored with stuff. You do the same thing over and over. So it was time for a bit of a change, and that was my change.
I think it's really nice. I think it's really nice to shimmy around, almost like like they do in People. They do sort of I can't think what they call it, but they do a chunk of time in a certain zone, and then they go off to another time in another zone. And I think it's a really good way of keeping your head really able to learn what you're doing, and then also able to jump across, and so keep everything fresh for you and keep it exciting, which is really good. What were you doing when you were in the UK? Was that a GP vets? Or?
Yeah, GP practice. We lived in Pembroke in Wales, which was really lovely. Totally, I almost got stuck there in terms of just loving where we were. My wife's a vet as well, so we found a job in the same practice in Pembroke. And
wow!
Yeah, we spent 3 years there, and absolutely loved it. It's just the weather was just not good enough. That's why it had to be Australia. Needed a bit more sun.
It's a completely different kettle of fish, isn't it? I mean, it's not even comparable, is it? So yeah, fair enough. There was no way the UK was ever going to be able to offer anywhere. I mean, there are places that are not quite so wet as Wales, but it's
We were almost fooled. Our first year there, we had the best summer. It was just magical. We're like, I don't know what people are on about. It's really nice in the UK. And then one day it started raining and it didn't stop for 2 years. And we're like, okay, we tap out. We can't deal with this.
It's fair enough. I've got a few friends from South Africa, and the one thing that they do always wish is that they could just bring the weather over. They're happy here, they love it here, but if they could just bring the weather over. So, and it's funny because globally everybody laughs at us for talking about the weather, and it's like, well, why wouldn't you? We've got too much to talk about. It's the most exciting thing going on most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that does make sense. Did you have any other vets? Because if you and your wife were both in the same practice, that's probably all the staff going in Pembrokeshire, isn't it?
No, it was a big practice. Yeah, no,
Oh.
it was a probably 5 or 6 vet practice. No, busy.
Oh wow, that probably the biggest one they had.
I don't know. It was you have all the little small towns, like this individual towns are small because they're all close together. It makes for a big population. No, there were lots of vets.
Oh, good. That's really nice. That is lovely. So now I want to get to know more about you as well. And all of our watchers, please do get involved and please ask lots of questions, because it's always nice to ask about people that are all over the world as well. Find out what's different, find out what's the same. But ultimately they're all people. And so it's great to learn more about you. So what do you like to do in your spare time? Do you have any?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. My number one thing will have to be surfing. I'm a little bit obsessed with that. Ironically, really only started surfing in Wales. I grew up very much inland in South Africa, and on holidays I'd mess around with it, and then moved to the coast in Wales, and there was quite a big surf culture. So got into it really seriously while I lived there.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it's a lovely, cool thing to do. And I think quite a lot of vetty people do actually love surfing, which is really nice. But it's blooming cold. So I can't believe you managed that. You must have been like,
no, I can't believe it
dry
either.
suit on.
Not dry suit, but you've got the hoodie and the gloves. But I don't know that I could do it now. I was obviously young and enthusiastic because now I live on the Sunshine Coast, which is, the name is very appropriate, and the water's warm. And then still, when it's a little bit chilly, I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I can do this. So now I've got a lot.
Soft.
That's soft, absolutely.
It's fair enough. It's fair enough. So what made you decide to be a vet then?
It was there's a lot of vets who have a lifelong passion and they always knew it. Not the case for me. I got to hit 10, 11 and was having the career crisis. What do I do with my life? And it was just going through what I liked, what I was good at. But my parents were both doctors, so I knew I didn't want to be a doctor from a young age. That I don't know, it just didn't appeal to me watching what they did. I didn't like the smell of hospitals, which is ironic because a vet clinic kind of smells the same as a hospital. And it was going to be engineering or architecture or something like that, or then a biological thing. And I just really like biology. And you have to say it, I do like animals. Animals was always a big passion. But it was very much a calculated decision for me, like what fits with my interests and my talents.
That's perfect. But I'm stuck on the fact that you said you had a career crisis at age 10 or 11.
Well, not a career crisis, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was completely lost.
I think for anybody watching, don't panic if you don't know what you want to do at age 10 or 11. Many people don't know what they want to do at age 25.
Or 40 something.
Yeah. Lots of people. That's when I would have said a career crisis was acceptable, when you've tried a few things and you still don't know.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's fair enough, though. No, that's amazing. So basically, it's been in your blood forever. And obviously, you've got the medical background as well, which must have been lovely. And how cool is that? Your parents have got the humans covered. You've got the animals covered. Nailed.
Yeah. Well, there's still that thing that doctors often don't quite believe that we do the same stuff. So even my parents I'd talk about a case years into my career, and they'd go, "Oh, you guys do that in animals?" I'm like, "Yes. Didn't you see me study for 6 years? We do know a lot of stuff, and we do all the same, and it's the same biology. So yes, all the stuff that you do, we do." most
I
of
think also there's an issue of parent versus child. Like you're always going to be the kid in their head, no matter how old, how qualified, doesn't matter. You know nothing compared to them.
it. I don't know. My parents they're nice like that. You're always the child, but then there's suddenly a shift where you go. I literally remember there was a day when I realized, hang on, I'm the responsible adult now, and I'm taking care of you, and we're together, and not the other way around anymore.
Yeah, that is fair enough. I do hear that this is going to come, and I don't relish that moment. But
You're not
I
there
just
yet.
feel like in my head, career wise, I'll always know nothing.
Uh,
It's all right. I know my place. I accept it, so it's all fine.
yeah.
So what's your favourite part of being a vet?
I think increasingly, and this sounds silly, but it's increasingly the people. It's the relationships. Again, I love animals, love working with them, but the fulfillment is building that relationship with the clients and coworkers, and that's a big thing for me. I'm increasingly interested in veterinarians as well, all veterinarians and nurses and veterinary staff, and working on helping them to thrive and be happy in their careers, versus just animal focused. Because again, we can't have the animals if we don't have the people. People unhappy with us. And I find a lot of satisfaction in that. Is even when things don't go well, um, there's still the relationship part can go well. So that's probably my biggest kick I get out of it.
I think that's absolutely brilliant and really commendable as well, because I think often that is a big part of the piece, and people don't necessarily always recognise how important that part is. Because if you've got good relationships with your colleagues, you'll get on well in your day, and then when you have a good day, that feeds on to how well you'll get on with your clients and just the whole vibe of the practice. And yeah, it's a really big thing. So that's really lovely to hear. Do you think that has thrived since doing your Vet Vault, podcast? Because now
Yeah,
you've
for
been
sure.
talking to people.
It's an ongoing, it's a positive feedback thing. So that's why I started the Vet Vault. Is the people call it soft skills. I think it's a misnomer. It's not. It's actually not that. So it's actually pretty hard to do it well. But that's neglected. We don't do. Increasingly at universities, they do focus on that, but we certainly didn't.
Wow.
It was all clinical, 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 and then that makes your first 5 to 10 years really hard, because it's no point knowing all this clinical knowledge and trying to fix animals, but you get stuck with the human side of it. And with this also the internal facing stuff. I mean, how do you cope with it? How do you take care of yourself? How do you stay positive and motivated? And I had to learn the hard way over 10 to 15 years. And so that's why we started the Vet Vault, just to go, well, let's talk about this. So vets coming behind us get an idea and learn about some strategies, and hear other vets talk about how they did it or how they do it. And then the more I get into it, the more I talk about this, the more I research it, the more I'm learning. And so it's a really lovely feedback cycle, because I can then go still apply that to my own life. So yeah, definitely the Vet Vault makes it's constantly in my head, and then trying to find ways to get it back out into the world to teach more people. That's
I
just
think
my
that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. It's not something you don't just know it. You're never going
Yeah,
to get to the end of that
yeah.
cycle. I mean, because you're talking about mindfulness there, really, as well, aren't you? Especially with the self-help side of things. So that's really good. I mean, how many people have you got following your Vet Vault now and stuff?
So there's the Vet Vault's two parts. The one is we call the open Vet Vault, so on any of the podcast players, where we talk about the non-clinical side of things. There we'll get between 1,000 and 3,000 listeners per episode normally.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, is it? I've got no idea. It's so hard. I feel like it's
I
globally
think
not.
that's massive.
Yeah, and then excuse me, that's something in my eye. The clinical one, that's a subscription model, so that's how we're trying to fund it. So that's not big enough yet. There's about 300 subscribers now, but growing. We'll get there. Yeah,
Wow, well done.
the clinical side came as an add-on, but it's funny because the more we were working on how to thrive and how to do this job properly and how to be happy as a vet, because that's what it comes down to. How do I have a happy, thriving career as a vet or a vet nurse?
Totally.
And then I did realize, so I completely went away from the clinical side and went, let's talk about all the non-clinical things. and then figured out at a stage that also part of being happy as a vet is to know what you're doing. So
Yeah,
continuing learning about the clinical stuff increases your confidence, and when you're confident, you're happier and you're better at your job. And it's again, it's that feedback. So that's how that came about.
that's amazing. How long have you been doing it now?
So the non-clinical one, about 3 years now, and then the
Wow,
clinical just turned 1 year. 1 year last week since we
that's
launched.
amazing.
Yeah.
One of my nurses and fellow physios, she's just done her exams. She came and did a day seeing practice with me, and when I said about going on your podcast, she was like, "Oh yeah, I listened to that."
Oh,
I was
cool.
like, "Wow!" And like, so I was like, statistically speaking, that's quite impressive because we're the other side of the world. I mean, in all fairness, I hadn't heard of it before at all, and then
Yeah.
now I've heard of it loads. So
Yeah, well, it's true. Once you're aware of something, you start picking it up, isn't it? That's lovely to hear. That makes me very happy. Thank you.
yeah, no, you're welcome. She was thrilled because she was just like, "Oh my god, yeah, I listened to that. That's amazing." So it made me feel great as well. So that was
Cool.
lovely. So tell me about your pets. Have you got any pets at
You
the
do it.
moment?
Yes, too many. Um,
You've got
so
three
we.
kids, so they've all
I was
got pets,
gonna say
right?
I've got 3 kids and a wife who's also very enthusiastic. So 2 dogs. I've got one dog. Billy Dog's the best dog in the world. I'm just putting that out there. I challenge anyone to challenge that assertion. He's a poodle crossed with a whippet, the best combination. And then a little Daxie, a little sausage dog, who is arrogant and thinks she's the best. She thinks she's the best dog in the world, but and then we have chickens and birds. And what else? I feel like there's more. Fish, heaps of fish. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Oh, that's a lovely little combo.
Two birds. So we moved from Perth to the Sunshine Coast just over a year ago, and we did a big drive. We camped, spent about 2 months driving across the top end of Australia. So the Crocodile Dundee part of Australia, really, where it's full of crocodiles and out in the middle of nowhere. And the kids refused to rehome the birds, so we drove for 2 months across Australia with a cockatiel, a budgie, and 3 goldfish in the back of the car.
Oh
That's how crazy this family
wow.
is. Yes.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. And I really want to go to Crocodile Dundee Land, by the way. It's one of my favourite films.
I saw we went to a pub up there where there's a scene where he does the thing with the buffalo,
Oh
where he
yeah.
hypnotizes the buffalo. That buffalo is now passed, and he's stuffed, and he stands. He's in a big pub up in the north there. So I've got a photo with this Crocodile Dundee buffalo.
Oh wow. I so want to go there and
He
see
was a
that.
pet. He was a tame pet with these massive horns who lived out his days next to the pub.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So cool.
An
Um,
incredible part of the country. If you ever have the opportunity, that's definitely worth doing.
I definitely want to get to Australia at some point. I've got a feeling it's going to be that retirement goal, isn't it? When you finally got time to come and do it properly and spend months there because it's so
Mm,
massive. I
yeah.
saw a picture once and it had like all like loads of other countries all fit inside Australia. It's like
Yeah.
that blew my mind.
Yeah, we drove. That trip was over 10,000 kilometers,
That
and
is,
that's just one way. That's not even seeing. That's just for hugging the coast on about a third of the country.
I can't even imagine driving that long. I'd get sore butt. That's not good. So, right. So you're an emergency vet these days. So, you can tell us what still grosses you out because you must see some humdingers as an emergency vet.
I don't know. You get pretty stoic about it. I don't.
Really?
You know what grosses me out? I don't like broken bones. The
Exactly. They
I,
crunch.
I think it's an empathy thing as well. I always have a little bit into. So I don't do orthopedics. The whole idea of it just ugh. I when you I don't know, I can't wait to anesthetize them when they come in and the things are dangling. Like, oh, just knock it out and let me put it back together. Because I can
I
just imagine.
knew something would gross you out. You
Yeah,
see,
that's probably the main thing. And then you don't get over the smell of certain kinds. Sorry, I know it's early in the morning, but when they have the hemorrhagic, the bloody sort of diarrhea, that's just a stink that you can't get used to.
No, that is so true. I had a vet once that I used to work with, and she hated amputations so much, and she had to do a tail amp or something. She, you have to have the bone cutters. She would get like the hand towels, wrap them around the handles, not look, turn away, and then literally go, oh, like that. It was so funny. It was every time you knew it was, oh, Nikki's doing it up again. Get her extra towels.
With the towels, so she doesn't have to feel it so much. Was that what the towels
was? Exactly it.
That's hilarious.
That was exactly it. And I don't blame her. And I have to say as well, I had a patient come in the other day, and it had subcutaneous emphysema. And so loads of air had got under its skin, between its skin and its muscle layer. And as I was massaging it, it was just like running your hand on crunchy cellophane. And I was like, oh, this is not good.
Weird feeling, isn't it? You've never touched a pelican, have you?
A pelican? No, not yet, but I'd love to. They look cool.
Well, you wouldn't like it because pelicans have that normally. Their whole skin is all emphysematous-y. The first time I touched the pelican, I had a sick pelican back in Perth, and the first time I felt it, I was like, oh my goodness, he's ruptured a lung, or this, something really bad going on here. And then luckily one of the bird rescue groups came to pick him up, but she said, oh no, that's normal. Pelicans have that.
Oh, wow. This is what always blows my mind with animals. It doesn't matter how long you've worked with them, how much research you've done, how many species you've worked with, there is always new nuggets of information that you never knew before. So thank you very much. I have just learned that birds feel like that disgusting feeling. Well, pelicans feel like that all the time.
That's the thing. The other birds not, just pelicans.
No, I mean, I have seen, because I used to be an emergency nurse as well. And so I have like birds, they do pop. And so, terrible. So they do, it does happen quite a lot, doesn't it? But I've never known that it was always the case with a pelican. So, I'm going to keep that in mind. Now I want to touch one even more out of curiosity. That's shocking. So, if time and money was no object, what would your dream achievement be?
Oh, that's a huge one. Look, I would travel a lot, I think. I don't know about achievement. Travel and surfing would take up a lot of my time if money was no problem. I don't think I'd move away from veterinary science. I think I'd still do it to some degree. It's a question of how much, isn't it? It's any job. If you have to do too much of it, it becomes tiresome. But I'd still do vet stuff.
Well, you sound so satisfied in your life.
Yeah, I do. I don't have anything massively to complain about, really. So not a huge change. I would just serve more. I would outsource a lot of the editing I do, like a lot of the nuts and bolts of the work I do. I'd outsource, and so that I can spend less time behind my desk and more time with my kids, and surfing would be the main thing. But otherwise, no, not a huge change. There's another podcast. There's another podcast I would like to do. If somebody else would pay for it, that I thought of on our trip across Australia. There's some. Well, it's a long story, but there's some really cool stories about the up in the northern part of Australia with the Aboriginal cultures, and there's some cool stories that I came across there that I feel like needs to be told. I'd love to do that, but I don't have the time, and somebody's got to pay for it.
Yeah, no, that's really cool though. But okay, so if you get yourself out there enough, that does sound like something the TV can end up footing, made by, I don't know, Gold Star Productions or something. Fitz Media, get them doing it.
I'm stuck on audio. I love audio. I would make more podcasts.
That is very cool. The only reason why I was thinking early when you say about surfing is like, because it's right there. You said you should go more, and you just don't because it puts you off when it's cold. So I was thinking, well, you see, so you can do more. You just
no. It's a time. No, it's not too cold. Yeah, and where I live now, it's never too cold. It's just the time. It's just getting. Well, you can imagine with 3 kids. You know what it's like with kids. If you say what do I do with my free time, realistically, what I do with my free time is
clean up a dirty child.
Yeah, hang out with them and do fun stuff.
That's fair enough. So, why did you end up in Australia?
So we went traveling in the UK. Most me, as I said, my wife's a vet as well, and that was sort of the thing to do. Is for South Africans, a heap of us used to just to go and get a working holiday visa and go to the UK and work there, and then travel from there. Traveling from South Africa with the rand is always challenging, especially getting into Europe and the rest of the world. So that was our start, and then living there and looking back at South Africa, the instability and the politics, and there's a bunch. It's an incredible country, but there's a lot of just some downside to it. And we just looked at it and went, you know what, we don't want to go back, because we were starting to think about having a family, and you're going to start investing in a business and building a career, and we just thought, yeah, not there. And loved, as I said, loved the UK, but it just didn't quite fit with what we were used to for a lifestyle. So then Australia was the obvious choice. My wife had actually been here. I just immigrated. I just moved here. I'd never been, and just said, there we go, one way ticket. Let's go to ours.
That's trust, isn't it? Okay,
Mm.
wife, I'll follow you anywhere. That's nice.
Yeah.
Well done, you know your place.
Yeah, exactly.
That's brilliant. So if you could do a Facebook Live with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, so many cool people.
There are, aren't there?
I'm a huge fan of Seth Godin. I don't know if you come across his stuff. He talks about,
No.
well, he's in marketing probably officially, but that sounds it doesn't quite fit. He's just a very wise person. He talks about culture and workplace culture, and I don't know. You should listen to his stuff. He's got an incredible podcast called the Akimbo, Akimbo, that I think you'd love. So I'd love to chat to him. Again, on podcasting, I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss' podcast, so I'd love to chat with him at some point. And then if you go bigger than that, if you go, famous greats of all time, coming from where I come from, I still think that Nelson Mandela was an incredible human being, and that would be a lovely one to do, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be.
Live with him. I
Yeah,
think
that would be.
sense of humor as well. I think it'd be a really cool chat.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was very young when he was in his prime of us learning more about him and stuff. So I don't know enough, but I do know how amazing he was been. I mean, supposed to spend most of his life in a prison, poor thing. But yeah, absolutely incredible. I definitely agree with you. That would be an amazing one. The other two, I'm very sorry, I don't know who they are. But if you're watching these people, come and talk to Hugh. He's lovely. See if we can make that happen. We can try. So what tell me what people might not know about you, something that people might not know about you.
The problem with having a podcast is I talk about everything. so most people know a lot. If you haven't listened to the podcast talking about vet stuff, I really didn't like being a vet for about the first 10 years of my career. I regretted my decision. Yeah, I found it really challenging. I think, which is why I ended up doing what I do now. But that's probably the one main thing, is I didn't like my career decision, and now that's all I talk about.
Wow, that's amazing. But I tell you what, that's really uplifting for a lot of people listening, because I know that there are other people that are struggling with this career, particularly at the moment. It's a really tough time for vets at the moment, which is a lot of the reason why I started this up. And so that's really uplifting for people to hear that you struggled too for such a long time. You didn't bail out. You found a way of making it work. You found some positivity, and now you've managed to turn it complete 180 to something you love. I mean, how cool is that? And you're still working in the job. So it's not like you left it to then look back in rose-colored glasses or whatever. You literally have managed to make it work for you. That's just brilliant. Absolutely amazing.
It's been a process.
Yeah, but it's honestly, I commend that so much, because, so many people really do struggle with this career choice. Yeah. And, for all their own various reasons, and, and I can't, argue whatever about any of them. Everybody's got their reasons, but to be able to acknowledge it, work out what your problem is, and then solve it is really cool. And, because you often can't, because when it's your own personal problem, it's often too big. You can't break it down. You can't see the wood through the trees. And, and so you've been able to figure all that out. I mean, 10 years is a long time to do that. You know, so some people are broken long before they can figure that out. But the point is, you worked that hard. You haven't thrown it away, and you've managed to turn it around. I mean, that really is a massive thing. So I'm glad you shared that. I'm glad I asked that question.
I wouldn't say figured it all out. It's like we said earlier. It's a process. It's all a process. It's an ongoing process of learning and adjusting.
Totally. But you're in a happy place now. So you've got to that stage. So, you know, as long as you don't keep going until they go back round again. But it's all right. That'll be retirement by then on your scale of time.
Yeah,
So you'll be all right.
yeah.
So, yeah, no, that's absolutely amazing. So what's the most spontaneous thing you've ever done? Start a podcast.
Yeah, big picture things. Probably the move, our most recent move to the Sunshine Coast. So I owned an emergency clinic in Perth, and just liked this part of the world. And a bunch of things happened, and it was always sort of on the back of our heads is doing this move, but it was fairly spontaneous. I sold my business, and we sat there in this middle of COVID, and you know, there was an opportunity, and we went, okay, let's do that move. And we said, all right, and let's do a 2-month trip around the country. While we do it, let's just jump. And again, we moved here, sold our house in Perth, I haven't bought anything, I hadn't organized jobs or anything, just went, let's just do it, let's get in the car and go. So relatively spontaneous and pretty huge and life-changing. So that was, yeah.
Dan, that's not long ago then, if you've done that
No,
all
no,
through COVID.
literally a year ago that we did that.
Wow. That is absolutely amazing. And yeah, to do a 2-month, you know, sabbatical, that's quite incredible, especially with 3 kids as well. That is amazing. What an amazing opportunity that for them to have done as well. Wow, that's amazing. Wow. Well done, you.
The kids were challenging. 2 months in a car with 9, 7, and 2-year-old and camping across Australia. It was
2-year-old. Whoa.
He was actually a champ. I thought he was going to be the problem. He took it like a champ. It was lovely with him. The others are. Imagine all the fighting between the older two. 2 months stuck next to each other in the back of a car. It was really challenging, but good.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. So we've talked obviously about your vet vault and obviously how we ended up meeting. And so one of my next questions I have to ask, because now that I've talked to you how amazing physio is, of course, and you said you've taken some time to now process that and learn how amazing physio is, I want to ask you, what do you love about physio?
No, I'm still very early in that part of learning about that. My problem with it is because I do emergency, I don't normally get to that stage in a patient. So what I love about physio is the potential to speed up and increase quality of life. Because for 20 years, to be honest, I was oblivious to it. It was just, you're going to have your surgery and then nature will do its thing and you'll be okay. We talked about fine, the word fine. You'll be fine.
We did. As I was listening back to that podcast, I was laughing at that bit a lot.
So I'm quite excited. So your episode only went live about a week ago. So what I'm excited about is to see the feedback and to hear what people say and whether we start. It's very hard for me in my job, in my role, to take it on. What I will do as an emergency vet now, and I've said it already a few times, because we'll get them only when things go really wrong. You know, it's a Sunday and the vet's closed and the athletic old dog had a slip and a fall and now it's really painful. So my job is just whack it with drugs and make it comfortable and to get them back to the mean again. But what I would do now is say, go and talk to your regular vet about physio as well. Just getting it out on the radar, which is a lovely thing.
Perfect. And that's it. That is perfect. Just getting it out there, just so that they've had that, you know, knowledge that it can come in, because, you know, the next vet might not say anything. So having it even said once is just brilliant, because I know what you mean. Like I say, I used to be an ECC nurse as well. So, you know, what you are seeing is, you know, patch it up, get it better, send it to their normal regular vets to do the long-term stuff. Absolutely. But I mean, to be fair, that was a lot of where I got sparked off for my rehab, because I was just like, where do we go from here to here? what's in between? There's got to be stuff in between, and that sort of really, kicked it off for me. So but you're absolutely right, that is not the environment at the emergency room. So from the human perspective, it wouldn't be either. But
it's the
yeah,
frustrating thing for me is with the podcast again, because it's aimed at GP vets. Not we do an emergency one, but there's other stuff we do the whole spectrum. So I'm learning so much. I've got so many things that's new to me that I go, oh, geez, the first 15 years of my life as a GP vet, I'd missed out on this and this and this, and I don't get to apply it. So my big thing is I just want to tell everybody about it. I just want to make sure everybody hears about it. And physio is definitely on that list of things that I want people to hear more about. Get it on their radar, basically. Just add it as there's that option that I haven't thought about.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for that. I do appreciate that. So now talking about your dreams, what's the weirdest dream you've ever had?
Oh, crikey. Let's not go there.
I like to. I want to hear.
I can't pick one. Sorry, I should have thought about this. I dream a lot. It's weird. Like my wife always says she never dreams, or if she does, she doesn't remember it. I dream a lot. I've got a crazy subconscious. I worry about it sometimes.
I love that, because so many people do say exactly that. Oh, no, I never dream. Oh, no, I never remember. And I'm like, no, come on. Don't believe you. I think they block it out on purpose.
Oh, crikey, weirdest dream. I can tell you about recurring themes. It's not that weird, though. Again, I go on about surfing. I have recurring dreams about being somewhere. I wonder what this says about what I'm worried about being somewhere and the surf's really good and I don't have something there. Like I don't have my board, or I go get my board and it's broken, or I didn't bring one. So I have this, clearly it's this fear of missing out.
That's what I was about to say. Oh my God. That's so funny. Oh, bless.
And that's a fairly common one. It's especially common when I haven't surfed for a while. Then it's like my subconscious saying, "Hey man, what are you doing? You're missing out. You should adjust your focus in life a little bit."
How funny! Your brain really is telling you, "Come on, let's go surfing.
Yeah,
Come on."
my subconscious talks to me big time when I'm sleeping.
That's brilliant. I wonder if it's your emergency side, like because you don't sleep normally. That makes it up. Because I found when I was doing my shift working and emergency work that my dreams were much more elaborate, much more horrible, and I used to have a lot of day nightmares as well if I'd slept in the day.
Wow.
So yeah, I wonder if it's that makes your brain way more active.
I don't know. I for me at least, I feel like it's when because again I say I do emergency, excuse me, but I don't do nights anymore. I do weekends and I do morning shifts, like the early morning, just because I did 7 years of too many nights and got a bit burnt out on that.
Understandable.
So now that I sleep properly that I'm really starting to dream. I'm a bit sleep obsessed. It's one of my pet interests, just because I was aware of how I was while I did nights, and I also started doing nights when we had our second child, and he was a terrible sleeper. So there was a 5-year period where I didn't sleep well at all, and I thought I had depression. When I thought I was, I was like, what? This is me. I'm a grumpy, depressed person. And then I started sleeping again, and went, wow, I'm not at all. I'm actually a completely different person. And then because I'm still in the emergency sphere and I do talk to a lot of vets, it's a thing that I'm quite obsessed about, to try and help people with that, because the impact is massive. With bad sleep.
It is.
They talk about dreaming. I think it's that last phase of sleep. When you're getting enough sleep, that's when you're. It's what did I learn recently? It's basically your brain assessing things, going over it, replaying, assimilating memories and experiences, and trying to put it together in some sort of a way. So yeah, it's very fascinating stuff. I love it.
That is definitely fascinating stuff, and yeah, blimey, yeah, that's a really cool thing to learn about, though. So well, good luck on that journey of learning. So yeah, that's amazing. So you've worked obviously in so many countries, and so you've obviously been doing this for a long time. What's the coolest animal that you've worked with? Is it the pelican?
No, so I had a stint earlier this year where I spent about 6 months working at Australia Zoo at the wildlife hospital. So Australia Zoo is Steve Irwin's place.
Oh,
Yeah, that zoo, incredible place, and they have a fantastic facility just for wildlife. 24-hour hospital. So it's not the zoo animals. It's not the inhabitants. They have their own veterinary team, uh, but there's so much wildlife in this area, and unfortunately, so many injuries. Hit by cars and dog attacks and all sorts of things. There's a 24-hour hospital just for them, and I did a stint
wow.
working there. So there, that would have been all the coolest animals that I've ever seen in a 6-month period, all squashed in together. Incredible things. I can start listing them. Probably the ones that I enjoyed the most. The clinical work was very hard on them, but just seeing them are the sea turtles. We had a couple of 100+ kilogram sea turtles that we had this hoist system to move them around, just to examine them and to try and do stuff to them, and they just such incredible creatures. And then they've got this beautiful facility with a big pool out the back. So when you get them better, you go into the pool, and then watching them swim in that pool, just lovely, lovely, lovely.
That's
I could
amazing.
talk all day about the stuff we saw there.
That's amazing. I mean, the thing is, you've got so much cool wildlife in Australia,
Oh,
haven't you? I mean, it's
especially where we are here, this area. It's because it's right, because you got the ocean, and then you got rainforest and everything. So you literally, obviously, I think most people that focus of that hospital to a large degree is koalas as well. They were
that's
they
what I
were
was
very,
thinking of.
uh, they're probably the key reason for the existence of that hospital, because they threaten species, because they're in trouble, and the poor things have a lot of issues that plague them. So yeah, probably they are one of the coolest ones I've treated. I just the turtles are just so massive and so obvious, but working with the koalas were really cool, but frustrating to some degree, just because
Why was it frustrating?
uh, they're not they're so adapted to their niche and to their little environment that when things go wrong, they really struggle.
Mm.
Uh, and again, they're wild animals, so we look at koalas and think they're cute and cuddly, and that they and again, even in the hospital scenario, they're not like another wild animal that tries to run away the whole time, and that's so you tempted to think that they quite happy there, but they're not. The wild ones, we're not talking about the ones on display in the zoo. They're completely humanized, and they are quite happy to, but they're very stressed, and uh, they're one of those animals that things just go wrong. So you're treating one problem, so they have chlamydia, which is an infectious disease, that's really devastating and really frustrating in them. And so they'll have to be in hospital for like 6 to 8 weeks to get treatment for that. And then while you're treating that thing, then the antibiotics has effects on their gut. So they get a second problem with that. And then they get a stress related this. So it's a constant game of just patching the
Oh,
whole, hoping to get them. So as a clinician, I found them everybody does find them frustrating, but as an animal, they're gorgeous. They're so nice.
so does that mean they've really? Because see, with the forest fires, we were really obviously
Mm.
over here. We were obviously watching, with worry and bated breath over the forest fires, and obviously we know that it affected so many animals, but the koalas were one of the major ones. And
Yeah.
so does that mean that like a lot of those koalas wouldn't have made it and stuff due to the stress and things, or if they've been okay, the ones that made it to hospital, or
No, I reckon they would have probably euthanized a lot of them as well. It depends on the burners, because they vary. You're a horse person as well, and rabbits, and that there's some animals who don't do well on antibiotics.
totally?
That affect, and they one of them. There's almost guaranteed once you start antibiotics, they're going to start having gut issues and that. So I'd imagine, yeah, it would have been very frustrating in that scenario. I was still in Perth, so I wasn't involved in that. The actual treatment of animals, we didn't have the fires there, the big fires, but it would have been so hard. And again, you would have had a ton of vets or veterinary staff um, working with wildlife who also don't have any experience with them, because they are
Mm.
quite different. They are really quite a unique skill set. So no, it would have been a horrendous experience. Yeah. And that again, that's why it's so important, the work that they do at that hospital. It's not there's a few hospitals that treat koalas specifically, and it's research stuff as well. Like they take it very seriously. Like every single koala that comes in, the government needs to know about. They literally track where it's from, where it's going, so monitoring to try and keep them healthy and keep them going. But it's tough, and it's tough to see it.
Wow, that's amazing. Well done you, and well done to them for having that hospital facility for them, because That's just incredible. And yeah, what an amazing experience. So wow, I'm definitely going to feel more sorry for my koalas now. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I hate antibiotics. Obviously, we all do it. Yeah, when you've got to use them, you're like, oh, gut flora. Oh my god. But to know it's that fatal for them is just.
And it's not fatal to use it. You have to. So for the chlamydia that they get, they have to be on. The problem is that they have to be on for a month. So then invariably you start having issues. So yeah, we're often a little bit careless with antibiotics, aren't we? But it's not such a like I've got no problem putting a dog or a cat on an antibiotic for appropriate reasons. Thank goodness we have them.
Of course.
Some of those zoo species, some of those wildlife species, they don't love it. You have to be much more careful.
No, absolutely. I'm like gut flora queen. Anyone that talks to me, I'm always like, right, what can we do to sort your gut flora out?
Poo shakes. The koalas get poo shakes.
Do they?
Good. When they start having issues, they have to, you make these little disgusting milkshakes. Not milk, obviously, but with poo from healthy koalas, and then the poor buggers have to eat it. You know that baby koalas. Here's a little fun fact for you. Do you know the baby koalas have to eat their mum's poo?
I did not know that. I only knew about that for the rabbits eating their own poop at night.
No, wow. So eucalypt leaves can be it's toxic to most things. But the koalas have microflora that help them digest it and deal with it, but they're not born with it. So there's a stage of the little joeys when they're with their moms where to get them to shift from mom's milk to eating eucalypt leaves, they eat mom's poo, and that actually gives them all the gut flora they need to be able to eat what they eat. Cool, isn't it?
Amazing. I love that. I mean, I obviously it's gross at the same time, but that's amazing. Is it a certain time of day or anything like that they've got to eat at?
Yeah, that's a rabbit thing, isn't it? I now don't ask me too much because I was still learning while I was there, but I don't think it's a time of day, but I think it's a very specific period of their life where mom will make a specific kind of a poo and inoculate them almost against the stuff they're going to start eating.
Animals are so clever. So many little tricks that they've got at life stages, particularly, is just amazing. You learn these little nuggets of information. That's so cool. So I've learned the coolest thing about pelican and about baby koala food. Amazing. So what's been the most memorable part of being a vet so far for you?
Oh, it's been a long and varied career. It's just not a look. Probably that zoo stint was probably up there for me, just because it was so different. It was a brand new thing. I had a great opportunity to do it, and it was one of the reasons we said earlier why did I want to be a vet, and I had wildlife as a big driver. Again, growing up in South Africa where wildlife is a big thing, that was one of the motivators for me to get into vet. And for a long time, I felt a little bit that I didn't stick to what I wanted to do. I set out to do wildlife, and then the reality, I don't know, some behavior reasons, but I sort of got sucked into general practice. And I think because I enjoyed it, I realized I went into vet going, I'm going to do wildlife. And then during the course went, no, I actually quite like the other stuff. Just the normal stuff is interesting. But then to get it done, to go, oh, look, this is 20 years ago as an 18-year-old, I had this fantasy about being a wildlife / zoo vet. And then I got to do it. It was really, really cool.
So that is very cool. That is very cool. So my final thing I want to ask you is if you could just share your top tip for dealing with pain.
Again, I'm learning so much about that. Thanks to Matt largely when we speak to him.
I must speak to him.
Top tip for dealing with pain. I mean, a big lesson for me, and it shows my age, but we've learned so much about picking up pain, looking for it. We were much more cavalier in my younger days. It was like, yeah, you go, have one anti-inflammatory and that'll sort you out when you have this big pain thing. We've evolved so much over 20 years where we've become really focused on recognizing it, and that's probably the top tip is learning how to recognize it and thinking ahead, going, is this going to be painful? Recognizing and preventing it when you can before it becomes a huge issue. And then I have to add, you said one top tip, but I can't just pick one. But then the multimodal approach to say, instead of just going, there's a drug for your pain, to go, no, there's a series of drugs that we can use in a beautiful recipe, plus then adding in extra things like, I'm going to have to mention it. So being much more holistic in your approach to pain has been a big mind shift for me.
Amazing. That's lovely to hear, because like you say, it's an evolution, isn't it? And I've been in nursing for 20 years as well, so it's it's a long career, and it has changed immensely. And unless something looked like it was actually hopping down the road holding a leg up in the air, you're like, oh, it's fine. And and it's embarrassing to say that we used to use lack of drugs to keep them calm. I mean, insane. And so so mindsets have definitely changed. So you're absolutely right. And I think it takes a big person to recognize that as well, and move forwards with the learning, and yes, to multimodal approaches, because it's so massive and it's insane. It doesn't even have to be just drugs, does it? I know, like Hannah Capon, rugs before drugs, she always says, rugs before drugs, and I completely agree.
Rugs before, as in you're talking about just the slipping in the house thing. Is that what you're, yeah?
Yeah. So from an arthritis perspective, obviously this isn't necessarily from your post-op point of view. But that said, if you are taking your animal out and they've just had an operation and they slip, that's not good either. So that's going to cause a lot of problems. So, that's where that's come from. And we've got loads of them. I saw someone say the other day, motion is lotion. And I thought that was genius. I loved that. I was like, you're so right. So yeah, get them moving, get your rugs down, get your drugs, everything. It's just everything on board at once. So
there, you've just taught me something. The rugs before drugs, that'll stick. Because again, we as a clinician, it's drugs, and then we talk about, if you have time, you talk about I want to say obvious stuff, but it's not that obvious. But to say before, that's a mind shift for me to go, no, actually, it's that stuff. And then if it has, that's good. Thank you.
Oh, you are welcome. There we go. It's a good exchange of knowledge today. Yay! That's how I like it. Well, thank you so much, Hugh. I am so chuffed to have met you, and it's been a really great interview. I just really enjoyed our chat. So thank you so much. I've learned so much.
Thank you for having me. That was really fun.
You're welcome. I hope everybody's enjoyed watching. This is actually our last one before Christmas, so make sure that you check in with us next year. And oh God, that sounds shocking, doesn't it? Have a wonderful Christmas, wonderful New Year, and see you next year. Bye.
Merry Christmas.